13. This is the Boulder Arts Commission special meeting agenda for May 20th. This is the COVID version 0.20. To remind everyone about the format of the discussion, please keep your microphone muted except for Kathleen, because we want to know if you're here. In order to keep the meeting moving along smoothly, please remember to use the chat function. At any time, if you have a question for staff, would like to make a comment or respond to another person, please use the chat to let me know. I will call on people to speak, at which time you can unmute your microphone. When it comes time to make a decision, please first indicate if you would like to make the motion or second by using the chat function. I will name the people making the motion and second for the record. I will then call for any discussion, which you may again use the chat function to indicate that you'd like to make a comment. When discussion concludes, I will call on commissioners in turn to unmute and give their vote. The video, audio, and chat for this meeting will be recorded and made available to the public. Let's remember to give ourselves permission to take it slow with each step and each agenda item, and ask questions if we need to. It is important we get these decisions made so that we will do our best to steward these decisions in as close to our normal, transparent, and professional practice as we can. First, call to order. Do I have an approval of the agenda? Does anybody need to make any changes? Hi, Kathleen.
Hello.
Yay.
Oh, sorry. I am so sorry.
That's okay. All you missed was the COVID video meeting paragraphs.
Oh, okay. This is challenging. We have too many people working in my house, and the Wi-Fi is very challenging because of it. Okay, I'm on the. Let me see if I can plug this in.
Okay, nobody is typing, so I'm going to make the motion to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
I will second you.
And you are?
Yeah, thanks.
Who is seconding? Kathleen, are you seconding the motion?
Yes, I did second the motion.
Okay, you need to tell me who you are when you talk because I can't see your face.
Okay, sorry. I was
Okay,
still
thank
trying
you.
to plug this in.
You wouldn't know that.
Kathleen, I second that. I second the motion.
Okay, and do we have a vote? All in favor of the agenda?
Aye. Kathleen, aye.
Devin, aye.
Bruce, aye.
It's your turn, Georgia.
Yes, sorry about that. Aye.
And I also, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the minutes. Does anybody have any changes to the minutes for the April 2020 meeting? I forwarded the additions that I wished for. Celia and I were in a conversation a day ago, so she already has my changes.
This is Kathleen. I have no changes.
Devin, do you have any changes?
No changes.
Bruce?
No changes.
Georgia?
No changes.
Does anybody want to make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
And
Kathleen.
do we have a second?
This is Bruce. I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye. Kathleen.
Aye, Devin.
Bruce, aye.
Georgia, I.
And I also approve. It's unanimous. Okay, so on to item number 3, public participation. Due to the nature of our video conference software, we are not able to provide for public participation during the meeting. However, this conversation with the community is important to our business, and I encourage anyone who may watch this video later to get in touch with the commission members with your thoughts and questions about cultural affairs in Boulder. Our contact information is on the website boulderarts.org. Matt, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Just real quick, we did send out notice with this our last newsletter and with this ahead of this meeting to let people know they can write in for public participation. So if you get anyone who still wants to participate in future online meetings, they can get in touch with me and I'll read out a statement. There were no statements submitted for this meeting, but I wanted to let you all know that we'll try, while we're continuing to do these video meetings, to have some sort of public participation that way.
A different headphone thing.
Okay, item 4, commission business. We have an action item for the election of the new chair and vice chair of the Boulder Arts Commission. The role of the chair is to facilitate meetings in a fair and transparent way, and also have an extra meeting, because one meeting is never enough, with Mr. Chizansky in preparation for the meeting we have each month, as far as going over agenda items, things to add, things to take away. The vice chair's role in this is to be ready to take the place of the chair if they are absent for any reason. Matt, would you like to add anything? I know I've glossed over a lot.
I guess the only other thing I'd add is if you're thinking about nominating yourself or someone else, a lot of times the chair gets called to be the representative in front of council or in writing letters to council. And when other departments and boards and commissions ask for participation in, consultation with the Arts Commission, we usually start that conversation with the chair. So it's not a lot of extra work that Mark described, but it's a little bit of a responsibility.
Yeah, and one thing that while I've been the chair, whenever I've gotten wind of something that could potentially be a letter to the editor at the Daily Camera, I've already drafted the response to that letter in my mind. And a lot of times have had it ready to go because of a certain topic. So I think it would be good for the chair to be prepared to answer comments from the community. I have one nomination. I would like to nominate Kathleen to be our new chair. I've had the privilege of working alongside her for, I think, almost 3 years now. And I like her insight. I like her attention to detail. And I like how she understands the scope of the responsibilities very well. And I think she would be a quiet and determined leader for this group. And now everybody can use the chat to further, if they have somebody they want to nominate for this position, now's the time to type to me. And I will call your name out for you to unmute your mic.
Mark, can you hear me? This is
Barely.
Kathleen. Yeah, I'm on my iPhone, and this is the first time I've done a meeting on my iPhone like this. I can't find the chat function. I could do, when we did this meeting the last time, I was on my computer, but I'm on my iPhone now.
Oh, you probably can't. It probably is not on your phone at all.
Okay, so I'm just going to have to speak up whenever I have a question then, correct?
Yeah, just say I would like to speak.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I accept your nomination. I would love to be chair. I feel that you've done a terrific job as an advocate for the arts community. I think you have particular insight as a working artist. I'm very grateful for your strong leadership, your ability to talk to council well, and to people in the community. You have a lot of contacts, and I have really appreciated your leadership over the last several years, and we've really grown the program under your leadership. So along with of course, with staff and with council support, we're going into more challenging times, but I think that we have a great commission, and I look forward to serving both the commission and the community.
Well, thank you for the compliments. I think my timing had more to do with that, as far as,
You're being modest.
everything that's been going on in the community these last couple of years. I just sort of rode the wave. But thank you. Are there any other recommendations for chair? Any nominations? So we have the nomination for Kathleen for chair, and do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Bruce. This is Kathleen.
I'm sorry, Kathleen, I can barely hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. This is Kathleen. I would like to nominate Bruce. I think that he has particular insight, as you mentioned. He has had a number of leadership positions in Boulder in the past, and has been both a grantee and a grant. He has applied for grants and received grants from the Arts Commission in his time in Boulder, and in the last year on the Arts Commission, I think he's done a great job in responding to the community.
Well, thank you, Kathleen. I would love to do that.
Okay, Bruce, one thing I left out of the job description is you have to do whatever the chair tells you to do. Just so you know. Do we have any other nominations for vice chair? Okay, so it's quiet out there. So I would like to make a motion to accept the nomination of Kathleen and Bruce as our chair and vice chair for the next year. Kathleen McCormick and do I have a second?
Not sure whether I can second. Probably not.
Okay, it's time for Devin and Georgia. Do I have a second? Devin says he will
yeah.
second the motion.
I'll second it. It's Georgia.
Yeah,
Okay,
I seconded it on chat too.
okay, great. All in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
Devin.
Aye, Kathleen.
Aye, Georgia.
Aye, Bruce.
Aye, Mark. The motion passes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I believe under Robert's rules, Mark, you should hand the meeting over to Kathleen, but maybe because of technical circumstances, Kathleen might want to make some other decision about continuing as leading the meeting today.
If Mark is willing to lead the meeting today, I would appreciate that. This is awkward for me because I've never attended a meeting on my iPhone and I can't do the chat thing and so forth. I can't either submit or read chats. So if Mark, are you okay with running the meeting today?
I'm fine with that. Bruce, would you like to run the meeting as your first duty as vice chair, or do you want me to do it?
I'd probably prefer you to do it, Mark, if that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll have to figure this out before the next meeting if we're still in.
You're going to have to let your family know that you're most important on these Wednesday nights.
I shouldn't blame it on my family. It's just we've been having Wi-Fi problems all day, so. And I'm not going to coffee shops, so it's a little tricky.
Okay, the next action is appointments to board seats. There are 3 seats on nonprofit boards that each year we need to fill. Actually, I'm going to stop right now. Matt, is our guest here yet?
Yeah, Deborah Malden is on the line. Can you hear us, Deborah?
So,
Yes, I can. Do you want me to click on the video icon so you can see me? So would you prefer that?
yeah, we would love to see you.
Okay, let's see. Okay, see if that worked. Okay.
Hello.
Hi, I can't see myself, but I assume you can see me.
Yes.
Well, hello, congratulations to Kathleen and Bruce.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
And Mark, I've watched you from afar, and I agree. You've been really a fantastic leader for the Boulder Arts Commission. It's really been impressive. So,
Well, thank you. So, Matt, do you want to make an introduction for us? Matt?
he's muted.
Okay.
Hi, Matt.
Just to be clear on the recording, Mark, you want to move to item 7B and continue the discussion?
Yeah, since Deborah's here now, let's move item 7B in front of the appointments to board seats.
Okay. And I'll just ask if any of the commissioners have any objection to doing that?
It's
Nope.
fine. Thank you.
Great. So for the discussion starts off with an update on the budget cuts that the city's currently discussing amongst departments and with the executive budget team. And the executive budget team has asked each department, including ours, to propose cuts in order to respond to shortfall, mainly due to the economic outcomes of the COVID pandemic and its impact, especially on sales tax, which is the primary driver of our general fund, the primary revenue source of our general fund. So we will continue to keep you updated. It will be about June 1st when we can talk about what specific budget cuts we are going to have to bear in the arts program. But that process of reviewing the budget has been coinciding with a discussion we've been having with Create Boulder about nonprofit stabilization. So just a quick reminder that Create Boulder is a group of community leaders that came together, formed a nonprofit. What was that, Deborah, in 2016, I want to say?
I believe it was 16.
Yeah, and this is an organization, an art service organization whose mission and goals are in the areas of advocacy, leadership, convening, grant making, and especially around mobilizing the philanthropic and corporate sponsorship communities to increase the portfolio available to Boulder organizations. And we have had a great conversation already and a great partnership with Create Boulder, who matched the city's funds that we had set aside for the Creative Neighborhoods COVID-19 work projects. That was something that the city had brought $20,000 to a sponsorship program, which you all are aware has been commissioning artists to do work for their neighborhoods in response to the COVID crisis to help people process it or to help with keeping connected through the restrictions and to help people reconnect after the restrictions are lifted. And so that has been enormously successful. They doubled our reach through fundraising, and it's been proven that what they have told us all along. Create Boulder has said that a partnership with the private philanthropic community with private nonprofits is a path to what the cultural plan puts forward, which is that we need to grow the portfolio of funding for the arts in Boulder. throughout this conversation that we've been having about funding of artists, there's also been a strong desire that Create Boulder has put into a proposal for nonprofit stabilization. We understand that the situation we're facing right now has extremely challenging consequences for cultural nonprofits, and there is a gap in the funding available that we need to address in order for nonprofits to survive this and thrive afterwards and contribute to the community in the way that we know is important right now. I'll let Deborah describe what Create Boulder has proposed to the city. But the reason I put this into the conversation around budget cuts is because the city's ability to contribute to a program of nonprofit stabilization is a part of the decisions on how the budget is going to develop over the course of the year. So when we get to that part, we can describe exactly what that means and how that impacts budget lines. But I wanted to make sure we have this discussion now, because the proposal, the city funds do need to come from the grants program in order to make a program like this happen. So after Deborah, you describe the proposal from Create Boulder, I just want to circle back and talk about the details of the budget before we go on into how this might become operational.
Okay, great. Thanks, Matt, and thank you all for the opportunity to be here. So I just want to emphasize what Matt already shared with you, and that's that Create Boulder was formed as an amplifier. The goal was to leverage other funding and in so doing to help ensure that there are more dollars to distribute to support Boulder's arts and culture ecosystem. So that's been absolutely like priority one, and that's how we are looking at the situation today. Matt, did you want me to take a step back and just talk about my background a bit? You had asked me that earlier, and I don't know. I know some of you. I don't know everybody. I serve multiple roles in the community around arts advocacy, but my background actually started, I was a career banker. I actually worked on the E470 toll road many moons ago. I have a background in arts advocacy and arts grant making, as well as nonprofit consulting. I serve as the Boulder County appointee to the SCFD board. I think most of you know that the SCFD is a regional taxing district that distributes over $60 million a year to the Denver Metro arts and culture nonprofits. That includes $2 million within Boulder County. I previously served on the Boulder County Cultural Council, which is like the Boulder Arts Commission in that it is a grant review body. And in this case, that body helps guide the distribution of SCFD funds to over 70 Boulder County arts and culture nonprofits. And I chaired that committee for 2 years. I also serve as the arts liaison at the Boulder Chamber, as Bruce knows. It's a volunteer position to advance support for the arts within the business community and to help make sure arts and culture are included in the advocacy effort. So that's part of my advocacy role. In the area of nonprofit consulting, I just completed my 6th and final year on the board and remain a current partner at Social Venture Partners Boulder County, which Bruce also has experience with. It's a nonprofit that strengthens other Boulder County nonprofits through skills-based volunteerism and pro bono consulting. We provide support in the areas of strategic planning, financial management, executive leadership, board development, and much more. And all of this is relevant to our arts and culture nonprofits as well. Nonprofit arts experience, organization experience. I served on the board of the Dairy. I actually served as its interim executive director in 2008, which was a period of some stress. And I currently serve on the board of Third Law Dance Theater. I've also worked closely with the Office of Arts and Culture. I served on the steering committee that launched Boulder Arts Week. I think it was 7 years ago, Matt. I don't know, I'm not exactly sure. And I continue to serve on an informal basis as part of an advisory group. So we've been talking, this is my way of saying I've been talking to Matt, as have other people affiliated with Create Boulder, for a number of years about what an organization like Create Boulder could do and how we could be most effective in advancing support for arts and culture in our community. And with the COVID crisis, I think the opportunity has come about, and it's time for us to mobilize. We did that when we learned about the Creative Neighborhoods program, and we raised additional money. There's a lot of support in this community, a lot of concern that the support for the arts and culture community is not going to be top priority. We're concerned about the possibility of the city's budget. I mean, in the near term, we know that there will be cuts in the budget across the board, but we also want to make sure that when recovery happens, that the city steps up and continues to support arts and culture. And we think Create Boulder can play a role in helping to make sure that happens. We also see that we can play a role in providing more funding. So Matt, I wanted to talk to you. Do you want to talk about Bonfils Stanton and what they're proposing, or do you want me to talk about that?
Why don't we start with just talking about what nonprofit stabilization might mean, and then let's go into the option of working with Bonfils Stanton.
Okay.
Great.
So I think we all know that the arts organizations have varying degrees of liquidity. Some of them have robust reserves. It turns out the data shows that smaller organizations, sometimes more conservative, larger organizations that have significant fundraising, they actually may have lower reserves. But the concern is that each organization, depending on where they are in the ecosystem, facility-based organizations are going to be facing challenges that are different from performing arts organizations. Some of those organizations may be able to go on hiatus and preserve their cash and then come back in. But we know that almost all of the organizations are going to need to modify how they do what they do, how they remain relevant in the community, and how they emerge again. So there will be funding needed at a time when the expectation is that there'll be reduced support generally for the arts and of course, perhaps lower funding from the city for the Boulder Arts Commission. So we've been talking to Matt about what would it look like and how would we focus our efforts. So I think that the preliminary discussions are one that each organization is going to be a little bit different. Their needs are some of them have been able to hold on to their cash. Others will need to replenish their cash reserves, particularly if they have ongoing facility expenses. And that there may be a role for Create Boulder to help stabilize the organizations so going from relief really to more of the recovery period, and looking at how we can position them to emerge from the crisis and actually be stronger for it. Because what they did in the past is not going to be what they'll be able to do in the future. And I've been reading a lot. I've actually shared some information with Kathleen. Kathleen, I don't want to put you on the spot, but there's a lot of information out there and there's a lot of really good thinking. But it's really clear that the organizations that are able to seize the moment and get support for modifications to their business model will be better positioned. And we know that the arts are critical to our community. They're certainly critical to the vitality and vibrancy of Boulder. So we really think that this is essential. Matt, I don't know what more I can add.
No, I think that's great. And I think one thing that's important to note as we talk about how to help organizations stabilize and recover is that some may not make it. We're in a position now of having to admit that organizations are going to merge, organizations are going to go away, and that's part of the reality. And the stabilization is not meant to counter that exactly. It's to make sure everyone makes the right decisions as we go through this. But to an earlier point you made, I do want to put Kathleen on the spot. Because while we were having these discussions, Kathleen did have an email conversation with me about this very question, about what is the disposition of our grant funds and how can this best be used for this situation in the community right now. So Kathleen, do you want to say a few words about your thoughts on this?
Sorry, can you all hear me?
Hey,
Can you hear me?
see you too.
Oh, good. Sorry. I was born in the wrong century, honestly. I mean, yes, I had emailed Matt after our last meeting because I thought about the arts education grant, which, has been postponed to later in the summer for a deliberation. And then I began thinking, well, what do we do about the whole grants program? What do we do? Are we going to have a special facilities grant this year? Are we going to, with any assurance, be able to give GOS grants? How do we think about the equity grant this year? How do we think about the small remaining amount of money that we had left in this year's grant budget? So I posed a whole bunch of questions to him in my email. And he mentioned that Create Boulder was discussing how they could help us. And so I had a conversation with Deb and Jan Burton and Nick Forrester from E-Town. Jan is, some of us know, and some of us might be new to folks in Boulder, but Jan was a former council person and has been very involved as a patron.
Kathleen?
Can you hear?
Can you speak up?
Yes. Okay. Excuse me. Anyway, I spoke with Jan and Nick and Deb about what Create Boulder had in mind. And it was mostly sort of tossing around ideas. And the idea of doing a challenge grant with them, I really love the idea. I love the idea of not only doing a challenge grant and a partnership as a sort of in the next year, in the next 6 months and year as a recovery thing, but ongoing. I love the idea of building a partnership and building a source of money for Boulder arts groups to be able to shore things up until we have better economic times. And also why not think big? There are some things that we would love to do for the cultural plan. There are all kinds of ideas out there in the community about what Boulder needs and would like in terms of arts and culture, whether it's performing arts spaces. So I am very open to hearing more from Create Boulder and figuring out what that partnership might look like. And I also think that we should consider taking what remaining grant funds we have and putting it in the mix for this partnership. I think we'd have to figure out an equitable and wise way to distribute the money and how that would happen, whether we have a separate application process or we look at the groups that we've already awarded and award again, to help sponsor them. So that none of that obviously all of that would be determined. But I just wanted to say I really support this idea.
Thank you. Yeah, so to sort of continue the story, the original conversation that I was having with Create Boulder's team was that some city funds that weren't at that time determined, along with fundraising by Create Boulder, could be put together as a challenge grant to the community in order to basically to increase the amount and increase the reach that the city's funds could alone provide. And there's a couple of different ways that we discussed how that might happen. Ultimately coming down to the principles of helping organizations to pay back reserves, hire back staff, cover the costs of reopening. There's some very hard costs that we can have this money that might conceivably be raised to be really functional for the community. So one thing that we have already done is to try and have a better understanding of the need. And we used Americans for the Arts had a national survey that did a pretty good job of evaluating need. And so we did some outreach to try and get more Boulder participation in that. And that just concluded. I can, for anyone who's interested in digging into the numbers on that, I can certainly share the link to the Boulder data. But that's one step, is understanding the need. Another step is sort of how this functions best. And while we talked about a couple scenarios for that, an opportunity came up just in the past few weeks. There's been a group forming primarily led by the Bonfils-Stanton Foundation and the Denver Foundation, both Denver-based, around this exact issue of nonprofit stabilization. And both of those organizations have a Denver focus, and so that was the start of the conversation. But as I started to participate with them on some other programs, it became apparent that they both both those organizations had a desire for it to be a statewide endeavor. They're calling it the Arts Relief Fund, Colorado Arts Relief Fund, I think, and they have gotten some other foundations and private support to try and make a statewide effort, which they have a goal of raising $5 million. But we started to talk, particularly Gary Stoyer at the Bonfils-Stanton Foundation and I started to talk about Create Boulder's idea for fundraising in Boulder and this concept crash together well. And it seems like that is a really viable path forward. And Deborah, I'll hand it back to you to sort of talk about what Create Boulder sees as the advantages of this before we launch into what the city's role might be.
Right. So first of all, the original intent, and like other relief funds, you might have followed this, there were some artist relief funds that started City of Denver only, and then Colorado Creative Industries came in, and so they've launched them as more statewide initiatives. Right now, the COVID-19 Arts and Culture Relief Fund is only for Denver Metro, and that's really because the interest in coming in and supporting the funding of this fund has really been within the Denver Metro community. And the amount that's been raised, Bonfils-Stanton has committed $1 million. They've raised an additional $400,000 to $500,000. And they're looking at this as a Denver Metro, which includes Boulder. And one of the things that excites me about this initiative is that Boulder has really been kind of left out of the conversation. If you followed recently some of the changes at Colorado Creative Industries and the way they're prioritizing funding going forward, actually, it's likely that the Boulder-based organizations are going to lose out. The annual granting, general operating support grants that used to be under, I think Colorado Creates was the name of it, once the current commitments run out, they're no longer planning to implement that. Right now, they're looking at more relief funding, so maybe it'll come back, but they're really looking at the lens their lens is organizations that are in underserved communities. Okay, so it's very hard for Boulder to compete in that sense. And we also know that at the national level, the NEA money, some of which comes in through Colorado Creative Industries distributes, there's a focus on rural. So Boulder is kind of in the middle, right? We're not Denver, we don't have Bonfils-Stanton, and we're not rural, and we're not considered a typical underserved community. So there's money that we're not getting. And what excites me about this region, this Denver Metro Fund, is that if Create Boulder were to participate, we would be at the table, which by definition means that we're able to advocate on behalf of the Boulder arts community when it comes to the policies, the funding criteria, and the final grant-making decision. We have reason to believe that if we were to commit sooner rather than later, there'll be I should say that they're expecting 2 rounds of funding. The first round will, the grant applications will go out in June, decisions will be made end of June for early July, and they're anticipating a second round. But if Create Boulder is not at the table, I fear that Boulder is not going to be part of the conversation. And so I'm interested in seeing if we could participate with an understanding that whatever money Create Boulder and ideally the city of Boulder committed to this first funding, it would have to come back into Boulder. Mm-hmm. Now, there's some risk we would not have absolute control over the decisions that are made, but we certainly would have a greater ability to influence the funding policies. And one of the things that Gary Stoyer indicated is that he knows that the notion of underserved communities doesn't apply in all cases to all of the counties in the Denver metro region. And not only that, he's looking to support organizations such as the Colorado Symphony, right? It's a foundational organization. It's really critical to the ecosystem, but it doesn't fit that classic kind of lens that some of the other funds are using for the distribution of funds, which I think is very encouraging. So we do have it appears that were we to commit fairly soon, we would have the ability to be at the table and to participate in the first round. And I think that enhances our ability to make sure that not only does the funding of Create Boulder and the city come back into Boulder, we actually capture more of the money that the other $1.4 million than would otherwise be achieved. So it's additional leverage of our commitment. And Create Boulder was founded based on a commitment to leveraging funding. And I think this really meets that objective well. Also, I think it's worth saying that Bonfi Stanton is arguably the most credible arts funder in the Denver metro region, other than perhaps the SCFD, which funds on a completely different basis. Much of it is formula. It's done by legislation. At the local level, it's funded by the decisions are made by the local council. So we would be working with, clearly an organization that has been a leader in funding arts and culture, as well as in funding nonprofit leadership development. And I think that would also be a good opportunity for not only the Create Boulder, but for the city to be having the advantage of being with such a credible funder. Right? We're going to be learning from the best and participating in some of the key conversations. So I think it's worth considering. Create Boulder is very excited about it. It's obviously predicated on the city being interested as well. But I think it's an opportunity that isn't going to come around again, because this crisis isn't going to happen again, hopefully. And they're expecting that this fund would be in place for 2 years, which I also think is good. It's not just a relief fund. It's a release. They're looking at relief and stabilization. They're also looking at opportunities to encourage organizations to merge where that's appropriate. Right? So they can actually bring up conversations and introduce organizations and see if they can encourage those kinds of solutions, which otherwise may not happen. So, Matt, is there any, missed any of the key points here?
So I think I just want to state that from my perspective, that there's another advantage, which is the hard decision that is going to have to be made. Funding or not funding individual organizations for stabilization may mean they close or don't close. And that's one advantage that shifting nonprofit stabilization dollars that we might put together to a big effort like this gives us, is that there's a bit more consultation, and it's not done at the commission level. And it can be done a little bit, it can be done slower or faster as the needs be, not based on our cycles, and can be done by a panel that's put together exactly for that purpose. And I think there's a lot of value to that versus sort of some of the other options that we have, that it's actually very important that we consider.
Matt, I also should have mentioned, I think from Create Boulder's perspective, we feel that if we were aligned with Bonfi Stanton, we would significantly increase our ability to raise money on behalf of the city of Boulder. Right. I think it's unquestionable, right? We would be working with the most reputable arts foundation in the region.
Right.
And we think that's important. So it would allow us to do more on behalf of Boulder than we otherwise would be able to do, as well as to capture funding that we think might not otherwise come into Boulder.
Good point. So I wanted to just briefly talk about how this might operate and give you an idea of how it would impact our budget to assign some funds to something like this before we open it up to questions from the commission. So this is being reviewed by the executive budget team as part of the budget cuts, not as a cut necessarily, but taking $20,000 of grant funding to assign to this purpose. It is money that might otherwise get cut as part of these budget considerations. So as we lead up to June 1st, it is both of those concepts that are before executive budget team, but they are very excited about this possibility too. So what it would actually look like is to take our budget lines, some underspent lines and some unspent lines. So we would assign from the unspent portion of the community projects grants, $2,250. From a portion of the certificate scholarships, the scholarships to the University of Colorado certificate program, $2,250. From the cultural field trip funds, $5,500. And the entirety of the as yet to be determined equity grant, $10,000. So just to run through that again, community projects, this is amount that's unspent and we need to decide what to do with anyway. The certificate scholarships, we would be reducing the amount, and so we would have fewer scholarships or less to give to a new person enrolling in the CU program. For the cultural field trips, this is an amount that is unspent for the second round, but we believe that field trips are going to be severely cut back. And so we think that money is going to be left on the table anyway. And then for the equity grant, you'll recall that back in the October retreat, we talked about exploring a fellowship for Indigenous artists. And that is a conversation that is still ongoing and made more complicated by the current pandemic. I don't foresee we will be able to make that happen this year anyway. And so I believe that it is money we would be leaving on the table this year as well. So with that amount of money, $20,000, that would be the city's contribution. It is up to the executive budget team. So we wanted to get your advice, that any comments or advice you can bring forward to them. And then also your advice on how this could be operated. I want to point out that we will only enter into this agreement if that money is coming back to Boulder organizations, and that the principles of our grants program are respected. And so we talked about the equity principles, which we have a very strong statement on cultural equity and expectations that our organizations meet. I think that this group, we will make sure that they at least meet those expectations, if not go beyond them. And that the money is carefully distributed to places where it will have impact. And that's something else that the Create Boulder team and Gary Story have talked about, is that this isn't necessarily a rescue fund, it is a stabilization fund, and so smart decisions are made with the money. So provided that we get guarantees on all that, then it's my recommendation to the executive budget team that we work with Create Boulder to create this match, and then have that as a special fund within the Colorado Artists Relief Fund. So with that, I wanted to make sure that we answered all of your questions about that and get your advice on how it can operate. And so why don't we use the chat function for that? If you got a question, feel free to raise your hand except for Kathleen, definitely just wave at me.
Matt, can I just also share that the conversations with Bonfi Stanton are encouraging. Yes. What we haven't gotten down to brass tacks, right? I mean, first of all, we would need the commitment from the city, and we would need the commitment from the Bonfi Stanton and the other funders that the money is actually coming back in. So what I'm hoping is kind of an approval in principle to proceed with the conversations. And then we would, of course, provide much more detailed information to the Boulder Arts Commission and to the city before any action is taken. I mean, you know, we're going to need assurances as well. Right? Is that fair, Matt?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Kathleen?
Yeah, so Debbie, what is the time frame again? You mentioned that they might be awarding the first grants in June. So are we looking for some kind of decision at this meeting tonight? For example, as you just mentioned, in principle, to proceed with the discussions. But then do we need to vote on this before our June meeting, you know, to go ahead? Would we as a commission need to do this? I guess that's also a question for Matt.
Yeah, so Deborah, if you don't mind if I go first.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like applications open in June
Okay.
and money gets distributed after that. The executive budget team are the ones who make the decision on if this money gets assigned for this purpose or not. And their process will run through June 1st. So I think what we need from you tonight is just good advice on how to do this best, and make sure that you fully understand what's going on. And then we would report back at the June meeting on, you know, well, I guess I should say we would report back before the June meeting on if we're going ahead with it or not, based on what you tell us tonight. And then at the June meeting, we would tell you about how it's beginning to operate, because by that time, applications will be coming in, criteria will be set. So we'll be able to report on the beginning of the program.
Deborah, I have a question for you and for Create Boulder. The initial thing that I heard was that this was going to be part of a challenge grant back to the community. And how is Create Boulder going to market through the fog of donor fatigue, which I'm sure is 2 months deep now?
Well, one, I think that to some extent we're going to leverage the work of the Creative Neighborhoods Fund to show that one, we can actually bring benefit to the community. And two, we actually believe that we have donors that are prepared to step forward. If the city stepped up, we believe that could be a fairly quiet raise, but an effective raise. The second phase, our hope, Mark, is that Create Boulder will be raising much larger amounts of money going forward. And that's a whole different campaign. But for this amount of money and this time, we are fairly confident that we will be able to raise the $20,000. We're not worried about it. Again, it's the message that the city is stepping up. We are matching them, and we are joining with the Bone Free Stanton group to help make sure that even more money comes into Boulder, and we think that's compelling. Does that answer the question, Mark? I could see you're. Well, I mean, we think we have the money.
Okay, and so yeah, currently I'm on the board of the dairy, so you know I get the whole, like, everyone's coming up with any way possible to get money out of anybody right now, and it's a lot of desperation's in the air. And I'm working with Create Boulder, I have this viewpoint of, if everybody in the community just knew, like, this was the arts version of United Way, where this is where the big pot is. This is where everybody wants to contribute. That's very compelling. For the Arts Commission to be involved with Create Boulder, I know full well that the direction the Arts Commission is going with grant funding isn't to everybody's liking in the arts community in Boulder. So I think would be a fantastic partnership, but I would like to know, what's on your agenda for Create Boulder, and then we can tell you what's on the Arts Commission's agenda so that we can meet up more than not. One thing that I would really highly recommend to this commission that since half the funds we're ponying up were earmarked for cultural equity,
Mhm.
that would really be nice if there was a hard sell for that to be honored when Create Boulder goes to Bonfield Stanton.
I don't see that as a problem. And Mark, if you look at the Bonfils Stanton website, they have made a very strong commitment to cultural equity. It's a core value. It's the lens through which they evaluate their funding opportunities. Not all of them. They also understand that there are organizations that are foundational, but the cultural equity is absolutely a top priority. And I'm not. I don't anticipate that would be an issue, but I think we should really review the Bonfils Stanton pledge to cultural equity. They're the leaders in this area, and I think they will be pushing it as much, if not more, than any other participant at the table. I don't see that as an issue.
Yeah.
Kathleen?
I have actually a couple questions. Sorry. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. One, Matt, the executive team that's looking at the city budget, did I hear you correctly, or could you clarify that if we don't take this grant money that is remaining for this year and apportion it for this purpose, for relief and a recovery fund, that the city might take that back? I mean, is this an either or thing? Like, if we decide to spend it some other way, they would take it back. But if we spend it in this way to leverage our money, and we have a partnership with a nonprofit in the community like Create Boulder, then they're open to that and they would let us keep the money and spend it that way.
So, yeah, I don't want to pretend like they're threatening to take it away if you don't do this.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
We're having difficult conversations about the budget.
Yeah, absolutely.
I get it. Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that the possibility of leveraging this into more good for nonprofits is the reason they're making this decision to go forward with assigning this money in this way, right? So yes, they do believe that they wouldn't need to make this kind of cut because it will bring more revenue back into the community, and not doing it wouldn't. So yeah, I don't want to say it's a one-to-one, they will or they won't, but it is a part of the considerations of cuts.
Okay, second question, and this is probably for Deb or maybe Deb and Matt. How would Bonfils Stanton, would they be determining how we would award grant money that would come from Boulder, or would we have sort of a subset of either Arts Commission folks or Create Boulder and Arts Commission folks who would decide how the money is awarded for Boulder organizations? I mean, who would actually do that? Who would actually make those selections? Do we know?
So the preliminary conversation is that I would serve on the granting panel.
Mm-hmm.
Panel is being put together with the help of Bonfils Stanton. Gina Ferrari, who was previously a program manager with the Denver Foundation. She actually used to be the grant manager who supported the arts grants to the dairy many moons ago, around 2000, I think it's late as 2008, 2009. The Denver Foundation was a meaningful funder of the arts and arts outside of Denver. So Gina Ferrari, she knows Boulder, and she is my understanding is that she's playing a leading role in building out the panel that would be making the recommendations and the decisions around policies.
So, and if I could, so there'll be Boulder representation on a broader group who would make the decisions. It wouldn't come back to the Arts Commission. That's one of the considerations that we have, is that we are relinquishing control over distribution. However, I feel pretty comfortable with that, especially with Deborah at the table. We can also talk about how the Arts Commission wants to interact with this. Nothing is firm yet, so I can't say that there's a clear way to do this, but at least an Arts Commissioner can participate in the conversations with Create Boulder as things develop with Deborah as our point person. So, while no, we will not be able to directly make decisions on where the grant money would go, there are ways that we can have the Arts Commission participate.
Okay, third question. Is this a contractual agreement that the city would enter with Bonfils Stanton, or the city would enter with Create Boulder and Bonfils Stanton? In other words, would there be a time frame that somebody would be signing? A
Yes.
year, 2 years?
So I don't think we'll have a contractual relationship, but we might draft a memorandum of understanding so that we know everyone's roles. And it's something that we've done before. And Arts and Venues Denver, which is, the equivalent of our office in Denver, has already assigned some funds to go back to Denver organizations specifically, and they have an agreement already. So we will probably mimic what they have done.
Use their agreement.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we'll make sure it fits our needs, but it sounds like something is already operating.
Okay, and here's another question. Sorry, I'm asking all these questions, but I wondered the $1 million that Bonfils Stanton has, or it sounds like maybe $1.5 million. How many communities besides Denver are signed up for this? Metro Denver is, can be read a lot of different ways. So I just wondered whether all of the Front Range cities are involved. Do you have an idea? How many people would be in line? How many cities would be in line for funding?
So Matt, my understanding is it mirrors the actually the range of the SCFD. So it's the 7-county Metro Denver.
Okay.
Arapahoe, Adams, Jeffco, Douglas, Boulder, Broomfield, and Denver. So those are the 7. Okay.
And is it your understanding that all the cities within those counties have opted in, or is this sort of an elective thing and not necessarily?
Yeah, I understand that that Bonfils Stanton and the Denver Foundation have done a lot of outreach, even as like to Fort Collins and Colorado Springs, to try and put together this portfolio. And a lot of organizations and foundations have already spent their money, are not ready to contribute extra money out of their foundation. So right now, it is voluntary that Bonfils and Denver Foundation are expanding their scope. I will add that there's been talk of Colorado Creative Industries contributing money, but it would be specifically for rural Colorado. So, ultimately, if we decide not to do this, we lose our seat at the table to make sure Boulder is fully represented. And as Deborah said, that has been something that has been troubling in the past and has meant dollars don't come back to Boulder in other places.
From whom? There's SCFD, and then you mean from Bonfils Stanton?
Yeah, there's been foundations that have contracted to be Denver only that used to serve our area. There's SCFD because of the formulas that the one perspective on that is that the percentage of money that Boulder contributes is more than this percentage of money that Boulder organizations get back. I think that, when you talk about how the funding operates regionally, it's always better to have someone there, because bottom line, most people think Boulder is taken care of, and that Boulder organizations have avenues of funding that are not available to the rest of the community. And we know that's not the case. So we need to make sure that message is heard and that criteria put in place so that doesn't become a trap.
So, Kathleen, I think that Colorado Creative Industries is an interesting example. So you might know that they have a fairly robust creative districting program. And at the early stages, when it would have been possible for Boulder to compete, there was no interest in using CCI's creative districting certification, which is they see as an economic development tool, right? You bring arts into rural communities, into communities that are not vibrant, and it raises all boats. There's not a lot of attention to Boulder because of a perceived well, the reality is there is affluence here, there's money here, but we don't have a history of robustly supporting the arts. And even in their latest funding decisions, if you look at how their grants have been restructured, I don't see that Boulder is going to be receiving a lot of money. I may be wrong, but when I read what the new grants program will look like, and Matt, I'm sure you've looked at it, I think it's less money coming into Boulder and more money going out into rural communities and communities with large underserved communities within them. Matt, you may have I'd be interested in hearing if you feel differently about it.
No, I think that's accurate. I don't think it's bad. I think that's a decision that was made. Yeah. And it was a political decision on how CCI should serve the state. And but it does mean that there's a gap to be filled in urban places and in Boulder. Yep.
Right. Because we know that many of the organizations that the Boulder Arts Commission funds they depended on CCI money as part of its general operating support. And it might be 1 year off for every 2 years on, but it's part of their plans. And that money is not, it does not look like that money is going to be coming back to Boulder. So that's worrisome.
So real quick, I want to make sure that any questions Devin, Bruce, and Georgia have get answered. Do any of you have questions or thoughts you want to share?
This is Bruce. I'm good. Thank you.
Sure, this is Devin. Thanks, Deborah, for putting this together. It sounds like a great opportunity for the community. And so just to beginning, it's 20,000 from us and 20,000 from Create Boulder. Correct? That's kind of what we're talking about, like as a pool of funding.
That's right.
And then after that, it grows from there based on private donors in Boulder and possibly some incoming funds from Bonfils Stanton or other outside groups that currently don't send as much money to Boulder.
That's right. But the goal is to leverage this experience so that Create Boulder is more successful in raising funds from the local community on behalf of the local community. So this is a step in that direction.
And then what is that basically you're thinking general operating support for organizations?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, to me, it sounds like $20,000 of, what we already have it budgeted. This seems to be we've been doing the same thing over and over, so let's try something different. This seems to be an interesting proposition. I'm interested to see where this can go, and also maybe how it can help to unify some organizations in Boulder, because it's a very small pool of money, and I personally, and I think on behalf of many of the arts organizations in Boulder, would be interested in to see just the priorities and where the funding goes, because I think Matt just sent another announcement that Boulder was ranked one of the most creative cities in the country, and we seem to get those. We seem to top the charts every 2 or 3 years, and whoever's making up these contests, and I think that's because we have so many. Such a diverse array of arts organizations, and people feel like they can take risks here and they can take chances. And just speaking more from the music industry, but I see this in other industries as well, especially in theater. It's actually the smaller organizations that encourage the bigger ones to get better and do more interesting things and perform female composers and perform more living composers and all these great things that make organizations relevant to their community. I think that's one of the reasons I live in Boulder, that I think we want any kind of major funding that's going out to reflect, that across the board. So it's not going just to big or just to small organizations.
And Devin, I just wanted to clarify, I mean, the hope is that in the first round, if we bring $40,000 to the table, our expectation is that more than $40,000 comes back into Boulder, because we want to capture a part of that $1.4 million that we're not contributing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that might have been obvious to you, but I just wanted to make sure that's clear.
Thanks for clarifying that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Debbie, do you anticipate any sort of marketing campaign or would this be sort of a quiet campaign among donors that Create Boulder knows to perhaps increase our amount? Are you saying that you're comfortable with committing to 20,000 at this point to match the city's distribution? Or would you try to take that further?
We want to take it further. Our expectation is that there will be a second round in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would leverage this experience and then have a very clear marketing campaign to bring more funding so that we can participate in the second round. And if we were able to raise more money now, great. But what we want right now is we need to be able to move quickly. We need to make sure we have a seat at the table. Because even if we came in only at the second round, I think we lose some influence at that point, because policies will have been established, decisions will have been made, and it's harder to change once certain policies are enacted. So answering your question, I think we're comfortable at the 40,000. If we could raise more than 20,000, that would be great, but we want to make sure we can raise more money for the second round. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
And I think that's important too, because I think it's very unlikely the city will have funds for the second round. Yeah,
Yeah.
with the budget cuts, there's not going to be wiggle room left. We can start to talk about what happens in years future, but it's going to be tight for a while.
Georgia, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I don't. I think it's a lot of information. It's good information. I like to hear that, we're working together. I think that's important. I think that is definitely, I'm always a lead by example kind of gal. And I think that we need to show people that we are going to have to start banding together to make things work in this time. So I'm really happy to see that this is going on.
We certainly have to be creative. Deborah, another question I have for you. Is this $40,000 going to get you a seat at the table? Is that table going to be the adults table or the kids table?
My understanding is that we'll be at the adults table. Yeah. Yeah.
And you're
Cheers.
you're pretty confident that you will have the voice that you're hoping for in how this moves forward.
I am.
Okay.
I am. Yeah. I think, part of it is because of my experience serving on the board of the SCFD. So that gives me cred when I sit down with colleagues in Denver. Right. And also because of Social Venture Partners, there is also an SVP affiliate in Denver, which is part of the Denver Foundation. It's separate from SVP in Boulder. So that's well understood. They understand the model. And so I think that brings credibility. And I've also been a funder for arts and cultural organizations, and I've been at the organizational level. So it gives me the ability, I think, to think from different perspectives. But I'm confident that I will have that if this goes forward, I'll have a seat at the adult table. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So I'd like to ask if commissioners have any advice to myself, to Deborah, to the executive budget team about how this should operate, knowing that things are going to go very quickly between now and when applications open.
I think we ought to go through the budget and really talk through the stuff that isn't going to happen anyway, and that this would be a better use of the funds.
Mhm.
That's priority one for me. Priority two is that half of what we're contributing is our equity fund, equity grant.
Right.
And the Arts Commission, I think, should demand a guarantee that from Bonfield Stanton that this is part of the program.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would maybe add that at least to get this going, it might be good to have Arts Commission involvement as much as possible. I don't know what that'll entail, but I think, yeah, we're here for a reason, and that's to represent the people of Boulder and the arts community. So I think it's important to have, I don't know what it's going to involve, but I think it's important to have that be a real collaborative effort.
I agree with that point too.
Yeah, well, to that point then, I don't know what it's going to involve either. It's very early and it'll develop quickly. So perhaps we could get someone to nominate themselves to represent the Arts Commission in some conversations moving forward.
I would be happy to. Someone else might want to as well, but
You want to do that at this meeting tonight?
to nominate myself,
Well,
to be part of the
request to
conversation.
be a part of the Create Boulder plan for the Bonfield Stanton meeting. Do we want to make that decision tonight?
I think that would be a good idea.
I think you're going to have to.
I think we
Okay.
have, I think if we want to be at our table with Create Boulder to discuss how we go forward with this, I think we need to commit to some level.
Just-
I'm happy to join Kathleen if you want
Oh, great.
somebody else.
Well, we could only take two. So I just want to be clear, though, that not knowing how this might play out, I'm not sure this will be like you consulting with Deborah and Deborah representing us to the team, or the Arts Commission having some sort of role to play with Bonfi Stanton and Denver. I don't know how that's going to happen,
Understood.
but
Yeah, that's understandable.
okay, great. So yeah,
Well, then I'm happy to help out too, since I've got all this free time now that I'm not there.
oh, well, we can't
Might
take
as well have the
three.
whole Arts
It's-
Commission.
Yeah,
So
Well,
we have to keep this
Anyway, if you want to keep me on the mound or keep me on deck, but I think that it's an intriguing proposition, and if Devin and Kathleen get overwhelmed and have to tap out, I'm intrigued on being a part of this continued conversation.
And I just want to assure you that our hope here is that this is a partnership between the city and Create Boulder. So
Mhm.
we're not looking at this as that you're passive investors in this. You have a perspective on what is needed to support the arts ecosystem in Boulder, and we see that our job is to support your work, right? So I think we all have the interests of Boulder in mind, and so we're looking for a collaborative relationship.
Great. So that sounds fantastic.
Okay.
thank you, Debbie. I'm very excited about it. I think we can work out the details. I think it's a great partnership, and I think it's worth the risk of, there are risks for the city, and there are risks when the Arts Commission sort of hands over our contribution without controlling it, because we've been very fond of the programs that we've funded that would, those funds would now be going to Bonfi Stanton. But I'm looking at them again, and I'm like, the equity fund would be half of it. Certificate scholarships there would be a portion of that. Cultural field trips, I agree that we probably won't see field trips for at least 6 months to a year.
Can you also elaborate really quick, Matt, on that the scholarship fund? What portion are we taking away on that, and what portion remains? And that's the CU entrepreneurship program, I believe.
The certificate program. Yeah.
Your certificate. You're on
Yeah.
mute, Matt.
Thanks, got it. Yeah, so that's the University of Colorado Arts Administration Certificate Program. We have $6,000 assigned to that right now, which Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, that would be the tuition for one person to take the certification program?
Yes, that's right.
Right. So we would be reducing that by $2,250. So basically, we would have partial funding. But I'll point out that in years past, we have divided that up in different ways and given partial funding before. So the new scholarship for the August, the fall semester would be a partial scholarship.
And we got one applicant last year.
Correct. Wait.
And
Yeah.
do
Yes.
we have any applicants this year?
We do. Yes.
Okay.
How many?
Just one so far, but the deadline isn't for a while.
Okay.
And then we'd pull from community project grants, the $231 from individuals, and then the organizations, $2,500. Is that where the rest of the funding would come from?
Yes, correct. There'd be from that unspent amount in both categories, it would be $2,250.
Okay. I think it's appropriate. I think I think it's a great way to leverage our money.
Agreed.
And I also want to say that I have the utmost confidence that Debbie Malden would do the best job for us. I can't think of anyone who would do a better job, and I really appreciate her skills, her experience, all the different roles that she would bring and the ways of thinking that she would bring to that role. So if we have to cede our control to someone, I believe that you would represent the city very well. So
Thank you, Kathleen. I'm excited and I'd be honored to do this. Yeah. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Debbie, for your presentation. And I also wanted to say, as one of the many recipients of the COVID Creative Neighborhood projects, that on behalf of all the musicians who received a small amount, I wanted to thank you and obviously the Arts Commission. I wish, there was 10 times that amount of support like that right now, but sounds like you're hard at work on it, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a wonderful program, and Matt made it happen. Matt and Lauren made it happen. So kudos to all of you. Yeah.
Thank you, Matt, Lauren, and Mandy.
And Mandy, yep.
Mandy, are you on? I can't tell. Is Mandy Fink on there?
She's dropping.
I am. I'm just muted.
Oh, hi, Mandy.
Hi, Deborah.
So
Right,
Matt, would you like a motion tonight?
No, we don't need a motion. I think I've got what I need. I've got good advice that we can carry forward. Kathleen and Devin will schedule you to have a further conversation once we know a little bit more about next steps and criteria with Denver Foundation and Bonfils Stanton. And I will continue down the road with the executive budget team to work towards that June 1st deadline and the budget cuts, as this proposal would be part of that. So I'll keep everyone informed as both those processes go.
And Deborah can leave this meeting knowing we're on board.
Yes.
Fantastic. And just know that I will make sure that Kathleen and Matt are copied and included in all of the conversations that we have.
Super.
thank you.
All right.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, Matt, this technology is new to me. How do I extricate myself?
There, if you move your mouse around, you will see a red hang up button on a bar. Yeah.
Or just turn off your computer.
Yeah. Just leave it going.
Just leave the room.
Anyway, thank you, everyone.
Right.
Thank you for all you do. And I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, next action item is appointments to board seats. There are 3 seats on nonprofit boards that each year we need to fill the lease agreements with the Dairy Arts Center, the Boulder Museum of Contemporary Arts, and by assigning a voting board seat to a member of the Arts Commission. Wait a minute, I said that all wrong. Let me start all over again.
I think we know what you meant.
So on nonprofit boards that each year we need to fill, period. The lease agreements with the Dairy Arts Center, the Boulder Museum of Contemporary Arts assign a voting board seat to a member of the Arts Commission. This is also the case in the ordinance which governs the city's relationship with the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Currently, the dairy seat is held by myself. BMOCA is by Kathleen, held by Kathleen, and the Convention and Visitors Bureau is held by Matt. Matt, do you have any comments before we begin? You're on mute, Matt.
Okay. Yes. I just wanted to encourage commissioners to nominate themselves. It is a little bit of extra work. You're basically serving on another board, and you have all the responsibilities and authorities that those board members require. But also, I've been serving on the Convention and Visitors Bureau board for a couple of years now, even though it is a commissioner seat. That's perfectly fine. With your motion, you can delegate that authority to me. However, it is a little bit of a drawback to the CVB just because I am not as free to participate as you would be as commissioners. I do need to be respectful of my city role and often recuse myself from conversations when they involve the city, which is often. I do encourage you, if you have an interest in the tourism industry and the hospitality industry, to nominate yourself for the CVB board, as well as the two others. So, thank you.
My comments are the dairy board is finally getting used to me. And so I have no inclination to vacate that responsibility if nobody else wants it. So if you really want it, you can have it, but I think they're getting used to me and they probably like a little bit more time. So it's more productive.
I feel the same way about BMOCA. I've been on the BMOCA board for about a year. And as you know, as we all know, it takes a while to get up to speed on what the issues are. And this is such a difficult time. So there have been extra board meetings over the last couple months, and I've been part of those. So if someone else would like to be a representative of the Boulder Museum of Contemporary Art, please speak up. And I'm sure that the BMOCA board would appreciate having you. But if no one else wants that, I would love to continue.
Kathleen, was Erica on the BMOCA board as well, or was it just you? I thought, was it two
She
people?
was like ex officio. So I was
Oh,
the
okay.
voting person, and she
Okay.
came to meetings when she could. But honestly, they have weekday meetings 4 times
Yeah.
a year.
Yeah, I was on
and
there for
other,
a couple
yeah.
years.
Yeah. So I mean, she was a teacher, so it wasn't working for her schedule. But and when she contributed, she was wonderful. Everyone really appreciated her.
I was just gonna
contributions.
I made a comment. I don't know if Mark saw it. Before Mark and Kathleen made those proclamations, I was going to offer, because I left the BMOCA board basically because I had another job in Florida. I just didn't have the time. And I was going to say I would be happy to rejoin if they wanted me, but it sounds like Kathleen has that covered, so I'm okay with that. And then I was going to tell Mark the other board that I would be interested in serving on would be the dairy, but if you're happy with that, I'm not really interested in the Convention and Visitors Bureau. I'm sorry, Matt, but if you really want somebody to step up and sit in, and maybe Bruce or Georgia didn't want to, I might. But let's see what Bruce or Georgia have to say.
Yeah, hi, this is Bruce. I'm open to being on the CVB. Maybe my experience having been on the board of the chamber would be helpful for that. You know, one of my missions is to get the business community much more involved in the arts community here in our little town. So, you know, maybe that would be a good transition, but if somebody else wants it, I'm totally okay not taking it.
Georgia?
So, hi, this is Georgia. I feel like since I just got on this board, I would like to know it better so that when I go to other meetings, I can better represent us. That's how I feel about it. Because I'm still, you know, understanding the issues that we have in this group.
So
But
you'd
you
like a
know,
little more time before you took on another role?
That'll take 10
I
years to
do. I
understand.
really would. I mean,
Yeah.
I have a special place in my heart for the dairy because my daughter dances there. I teach there, whatever. But like I said, I really would rather have more time in this group before I spread myself too thin.
Okay.
So Devin, are you on for convention or no, Bruce is?
No,
Okay.
Bruce.
Bruce is on for convention.
Yeah.
So are you, Devin, are you comfortable with
I'm
how things are
fine with
rolling
you.
out? Okay.
Yeah, with you staying, that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to be, I'm sorry, this is Bruce. Just to be clear, Matt, are you sure you want to step away from the CVB?
Yeah,
Bruce is already having second thoughts.
No. I just want to be sure I'm not taking something that somebody else wants.
No. I appreciate that, and I'm fine with it. I do think you'll bring a lot of value to that, and especially the conversation at the CVB board is going to be tough over the next few years, because for the trouble that the city's having with tax revenues, the CVB is even more reliant on that admissions tax. So I think you will bring a lot of good perspective to some hard conversations coming up. So I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, that sounds good. I just wanted to be sure. I'm happy to do it.
Congrats, Bruce.
Thank you very much.
So we do need someone to make a motion to appoint these three good people.
I'll make a motion to appoint these three good people.
You have to name us on the record and what we're being appointed to.
Okay, so Mark is going to the dairy, Kathleen's going to the BMOCA, and Bruce is going to the CBBCB, something like, what's that? The Colorado Convention and Visitors Bureau. No, Boulder Convention and whatever that is.
Who wants to second that motion?
Can we, if we're voting?
I think
for
Georgia should
ourselves
probably
to
second
use?
that.
Yeah,
It's Georgia. I'll second it.
thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's
Aye.
Georgia. Aye.
Kathleen,
Bruce,
aye.
Did you hear that? Bruce says aye.
Okay, Bruce is aye. I'm an aye. Mark is an aye.
Great, thank you
Kathleen,
very much.
aye as well.
Devin?
I made the motion, right? So I don't have to.
Oh, yeah, that's right. All right, it passed unanimously. Next part is the grant program. Do we want to take a quick break to stretch our legs?
Yes.
Like
I
3,
just
4
need to
minutes?
stand up.
Sure.
Okay, let's stand up and stretch, and we'll be back here at 7:52.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Celia, did you record that motion accurately?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I can't wait to see the minutes.
Oh, I'll have to figure this out before the next meeting. I think one of the problems is that my computer is crashing as well. It's been one of those perfect storm weeks for me. Oop.
Matt, you're still muted.
Dang it. Why am I'm usually fine with this. So Kathleen, we'll meet to talk about what you need to do as chair and how you want to operate.
Sure.
And then maybe we can meet in person even 6 feet apart and I could help
Yeah.
troubleshoot it.
That would be great. Sure.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
Mark has been so generous to talk, and I have run a couple meetings before traveling last year, but yes, any help, any hints are so welcome. And also responsibilities, if you'd like to explain that a little bit more in depth. I can't wait till we get back to meeting in person. I just find all this technology awkward, but
Yeah, I do too.
I just feel very tongue-tied sometimes, but so you know, it's not my milieu. But I think that's true for a lot of people. So we should just understand that it's difficult for other people.
Yeah, well, if it's good enough for the Supreme Court, good enough for us.
I know. How are things going, Matt? How's your family? They're good?
Yeah, everyone's doing really well. School kind of wrapped up, so that was awkward. Awkward end of school, but
You had a graduate, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
We had a drive-through graduation ceremony.
did.
Very strange. Yeah.
I went to a drive-through wedding last week.
Oh wow,
It
really?
was streamed online. The officiant was there via a Zoom meeting, so the computer was set up in front of the couple, and we were all watching the streaming of this. It was up in the mountains. And then we drove by an hour or two later and got a cupcake, and everyone was social distancing. It was actually really interesting and fun, but it was so weird, actually.
It's okay. Weird is now the new normal, right? So
exactly.
I did hear about a wedding ceremony that happened entirely in Minecraft.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I don't even know what that means because I've never been to Minecraft. But
it's a game, and you have like a little person.
Oh, you have.
And you have a little environment, and so they built a wedding chapel, and then had everyone come in Minecraft to attend the wedding.
Oh, that's incredible! So you
it's quite something.
You could have your fantasy wedding.
Yes, it was cheap too. Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
But I have a theory. Okay, while we're on break, here's my theory, is that my children are going to be better prepared, more resilient than my generation is because of this. Because my generation, I think for a couple generations, we haven't had a really strong shared trauma. That there weren't wars and things were on a general economic upward trajectory, and this shared trauma is actually what sort of galvanizes people into doing really the important work of the world, and that it's going to turn out to be that thing that happens to an entire group of children who will soon be adults. So that's my theory.
Yeah, I just hope it's not overwhelming for them, because they're being hit with so many difficult things that they're not even, they don't even know the full measure of it. We as parents know how difficult it's going to be for them.
Yeah. But hopefully that turns into something great for a lot of people.
Right.
The sacrifice.
People are already getting really creative. So I loved what happened with Arts Week this year, and the COVID grant money. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff happening. So
well, Lauren's put together this Boulder Arts Online program that
I watched a lot of it.
Yeah, I've been really pushing that with I'm on these statewide calls every week, and thank you, Lauren, for being quick on the trigger with the link. But I'm on these statewide calls, and part of every conversation is, well, how are we getting people to pivot to be online and to be COVID friendly? And Boulder Arts Online's been doing it. What, you got 200 programs on that thing so far, Lauren?
Yeah, over time. I mean, it's sort of coming and going, but there's usually 10 to 20 a day, which is really amazing. Yeah.
Should we do roll? Is everybody back?
Yes. Oh, maybe everyone isn't back.
Yes, I'm back.
Georgia?
Yes, I'm back.
Devin?
Yes.
Okay. And Bruce, you said you're back?
I said it twice.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, the grant program is next on the agenda. We have grant reports from Boulder International Film Festival. They did their 2020 Youth Pavilion, Cinema to Schools, and Youth Advisory Council. It was a grant amount of $3,000. Colorado Shakespeare did their Shakespeare and Violence Prevention Program with local schools. Dollar amount for the grant was $3,000. Modus Theater's Sanctuary Project was a $10,000 community project grant. The Catamounts, Shockhead Peter, the multi-generational immersive junk opera was a $10,000 community project grant. And then we have a follow-up. Joyce Eisenhower is responding to our questions for the Vagina China project, which was a grant amount of $5,000. Does anybody have any comments?
Are we just, oh, sorry. Kathleen, are we discussing all of these together? Or are we discussing Joy Eisenhower's follow-up?
We can make a motion on, if, I imagine Joyce's is more conversation heavy. So if we have any comments about Biff, Colorado Shakespeare, Modus, and Catamounts. Anybody have any comments about their reports?
I was really impressed with Biff's, what they were able to do. They had over 1,000 students in free programs offered during the festival, making films, classroom instruction, mentoring. So leading up to the festival and during the festival. And I sort of dipped into one of the tents to see, you know, kids involved in the Biff programming, and just very impressed with it. I think it really is something that kids want to be involved in, and they really do great outreach. Colorado Shakespeare Festival, I love their violence prevention program. I know we've funded them several years running, and I continue to love it. I just think it's something that's great for elementary and middle school kids. And Modus Theater, the Sanctuary Project, the Shoebox Stories, has gone national. So I think it's, once again, Modus Theater is creative. They're dealing with equity issues, immigration issues. This was all about sanctuary and immigration, and this has gone to, we've had national leaders participating, and it actually was presented at the Colorado State House. It might have been presented in Washington, D.C. as well. So I'm really impressed that they're kind of making a national reputation, not only for their theater, but for Boulder and for equity issues, equity and immigration issues. So that's all I have to say right now.
Have any other comments from Bruce, Devin, or Georgia?
This is Bruce. No, thank you.
Georgia, I don't have any comment on that.
Okay. Devin? Devin, are you there?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. No, I have nothing to add.
Okay. This isn't for this meeting. It'll probably be for a future meeting. I agree. I echo all of Kathleen's comments about you know, Biff and Colorado Shakespeare and Modus and the Catamounts. You know, it's kind of easy work on our part. We just know these organizations, and we know the quality of the work they do, and they just always astound. They astound me about what they can do with the little they ask for. And on that note, I would like to propose that the one thing that really sort of stood out to me with these reports was the $3,000 grant recipients were turning in as much documentation on their projects as the $10,000 grant recipients. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a little bit heavy on the workload for the amount of money they received. And maybe we can look at some different reporting criterias for the smaller dollar amount grants in the future. I just thought it was a bit onerous for Biff to turn in as much, if not more, documentation than Modus Theater did. So that's what stood out to me.
Is that something we deal with at our retreat in the fall in terms of I mean, can we be collecting sort of suggestions and comments about how to change the application process or the reporting process, or is that something we need to vote on?
No, you're correct in the first case. Lauren and I will bookmark that, and
Okay.
let's make sure that it'll be before the October retreat, maybe as soon as July.
Okay.
We start to talk about changes. Yep.
Yeah, I have a big running list of things that have been mentioned over the last, well, since we stopped reviewing last year, so it'll just go on our big list.
Okay. Okay, the follow-up on Joyce Alice Eisenhower's Vagina China project, did she answer our question satisfactorily?
Well, I seem to be the only one that had a big issue with it last time. I know there were a couple of people who also said it would be good to hear more from her, but I would approve her the rest of her grant money. I do want to make a statement if I wasn't clear during the last meeting that that I understand that from the follow-up report that there were circumstances that prevented Joy and her partner in this project, Julie Marin, from keeping to the intent of their grant by offering studio sessions. But I also think that it's much more appropriate, and we should request and maybe have it in writing if we don't already, that if you're going to depart at all from your grant, from what you've stated in your application, that you should seek approval from staff and or the Arts Commission. I would prefer to hear about it, actually, so we're not caught off guard. I felt caught off guard this time, actually. But I had said before that I thought this grant was treated like a GOS grant, like, oh, we can spend the money however we wish. And it's not, it's a project grant. And we score the applications against other applications as well. I mean, it's not only for the application itself, but it's against all the others that we score them. And if somebody departs from their intent, I don't think that it's fair to the other applicants, because it's what would prevent any and all of our applicants from significantly changing their projects midstream or without telling us. So do we have that in writing? Is there any sort of understanding that they agree to or sign to that they will inform the Arts and Culture Office if they are going to change anything about their project?
Yeah. So the agreements that we signed with the grant recipients do name their proposal, their application to the Arts Commission as the proposal the grant needs to meet. And so what Lauren and I can discuss is making sure that they have a protocol, that if they're going to make changes, this is what you do, so that there's no question in the future.
Yeah, thank you.
And can I just add that?
Have any comments about the follow-up report by Joy?
Who was that Lauren that was just about to say something?
I just want to add, I think it's just a very good time, because I do think we'll see a lot of applicants needing to make changes to their applications. So I think it's something that we would have to address one way or the other. So we'll certainly talk about it and bring it back to you guys. Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah, I mean, I totally see where Kathleen, what Kathleen's saying. I mean, here's a grant that was supposed to be done with homeless people, and now it's not being done with homeless people at all. So, it's fundamentally a different project, just by its very nature. So I totally get it.
So before I do the blanket voting on these grant reports, I want to know from each of the commissioners, are they happy with Joy's follow-up letter? And is it okay to issue the final funding for that? Or, I mean, it was an unfortunate circumstance. I think, personally, I think Joy could have just done a better job of communicating the situation. I agree with Kathleen. It sounds a little bit more like it's easier to beg forgiveness than it is to ask for permission.
Right.
But you know, there are circumstances that sometimes you can't control. So I just want to hear from everybody first on this report before we vote on everything else.
We're talking now specifically about Joy's.
We're talking about Joy's report.
I'd be willing to give her the rest of the grant money. I just think it's a learning for us, and I don't think that I'm not into withholding money from her, honestly. It sounded like the parts of the project that she went ahead and did were very successful, and she reached a number of people. I was sort of adding up the numbers, and it sounded like she reached a couple hundred people. And I just think that as a learning for us, if we could maybe review the language that goes out to the artists, and maybe there's a way, even now during COVID, because people will be changing the grants, people will be changing the grants that we've already given the money for, at least the initial payment of money for. Maybe there's a way to email all our grantees to say, if you find in these difficult times that you need to change your grant, please put it in writing and send that to Lauren, and we'll have a conversation about how that might need to change. Because this could come up dozens of times. I went back and looked at some of the projects that we've granted, and I'm like, how are they going to do that in this? We awarded them before we went into COVID, and how are they going to do that project? So maybe we get ahead of it and say, please let us know if your circumstances have changed, and we'll have a conversation. What does everyone else think of that?
This is Georgia, and I agree. I think that we should definitely reach out to everyone now, if it wasn't clear before, that if they are changing the project, they have to get approval beforehand, not do it and then ask for the money still. And I think that it doesn't set a good standard for us to have someone, get the money, because there's a lot of people that apply for it, and there's a lot of people that are denied. And when someone has the honor of receiving a grant, for them to use that money for something different and then just go, oh yeah, well, it changed. To me, that's not acceptable. I apologize. I did read all the parts that we got. I don't remember the specific details of why they had to change what they were doing, but I think they should really have to get approval first if they want to receive the rest of their money.
Okay. Devin, do you have thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, I agree. We want to have flexibility in this time, and but also if people need to change things, ideally they tell us first. I don't know if it's ask permission. I think it's more just keep us in the loop on things. I mean, we have to be extremely flexible at this time, I think.
Keep us in the loop. That's a great expression.
Are we ready to make a motion?
Does anyone feel differently on the commission that we should withhold the rest of its 20% of the grant? That would be $1,000, right? Or was it? Let's see. It was a $5,000 grant, so it would be $1,000, right?
No, I don't feel we should withhold the money.
Anyone else?
I don't have any objection, but I do want to make a quick comment on what's been discussed. I just want to remind everyone at the last meeting, you did sort of authorize Lauren to be flexible. And as people make changes to timelines, to artists, to details and venues, that we can go ahead and pre-approve those and then update you in the packet. And then if there's substantive changes to the program itself that are different than the application, will come to you, thus the next agenda item that we have.
Right.
But we will nonetheless do some outreach and make sure everyone knows about the fact that we need to be kept updated, just to make sure. But I do believe that people understand that, and it may be just to be a peculiarity of the way that Joy Eisenhower proceeded. I think that's going to be the exception rather than the rule.
Okay, have we had enough discussion? Has everybody said their piece?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion that we accept the grant reports from Boulder International Film Festival, Colorado Shakespeare Festival, the Modus Theater, the Catamounts, and Joy Alice Eisenhower's follow-up letter to the commission, and accept those reports and approve them. Would somebody like to second that motion?
I'll second.
And who is Devin?
Devin.
And then we're all going to turn our mics on and vote. I'm going to vote yay. This is Mark.
Kathleen, yay.
Yay, Devin.
Georgia, yay.
Bruce, yay.
Okay, all in favor. The motion
Aye.
passes.
Thanks very much.
Okay, next is the discussion about changes to Angie Yang's earthware project. And this discussion will lead us into what we're going to be talking about a lot this next year, is a fundamental change to the project.
Mhm.
Who wants to start? Well, Matt, do you still want to make a quick comment? Or was that 3 minutes ago?
No, I can though. So what I want to point out is we received the request from Angie to change a project, and we thought it was substantive, so that's why we're bringing it to you. And the process that we're going to go through is that you could ask us any questions that you want, make sure you have it clear. If you agree that it's a good change, your approval of the grant in the past can stand and no action is necessary. If, however, anyone wants to take a different action, that's when we would need a motion.
Well, I would like to take a different action. One of the key reasons I voted for her project was the working with the homeless component of this. And what I haven't seen from what's been communicated to in our packet is an illustration of why the homeless component of participation has fallen through. Has there been any way to remedy that? You know, how, I mean, I like her project as a whole, but the homeless component was very compelling to me. And so I would, in order for me to approve the project, I would like some answers about why the homeless component is not going to work. I totally understand if it's not going to work, but I don't think it's been communicated adequately enough.
This is Bruce, and Mark, you took the words right out of my mouth. Thank you.
Happy to help. Georgia, Kathleen, Devin?
I agree with what you just said. Also, you know, this is my second meeting, so I wasn't sure what I missed, even though I've tried to read everything that's been sent to me. I feel like I'm missing a piece of information here as to why she had to change direction. So
because of the COVID outbreak and
Okay.
working with the homeless population.
Yeah, I would be fine with asking her to for an explanation and seeing if there's some solution she could find. Maybe it's working with Attention Homes. I mean, maybe it's working with a particular group of folks that is in a more controlled situation, and you'd be assured of, or the folks that she is participating would be assured of social distancing, and it would feel safe for everyone to participate. But I just wonder if there's some sort of solution she could find to, or at least let us know whether she explored any solutions to working with folks who are homeless and continuing with the project she had suggested. So I would like to hear an explanation.
Devin?
I'm okay with that.
Okay, so I am going to make a motion that we wish for Angie to provide a more thorough explanation as to the homeless component of her project not being fulfilled, and what efforts have been taken to make it a possibility. We would like more communication and more thorough explanation as to why this portion of the project has been jettisoned.
I'll second that.
Okay, now we're going to vote.
Devin, I.
Kathleen, I.
Georgia, I.
Bruce, I.
Mark, aye.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll get back to you on this at the June meeting.
Okay. Matters from commissioners. Do we have any matters?
Yes. Yes. Do we have any sense of where our grants program is going? Do we have any sense of what kind of funding we might have for next year, so we can think about whether we have to completely redo the grants program or whether we're just reducing everything by a certain percentage and we don't know what that percentage is yet?
I second that question.
I will do my best to answer it.
Completely redo this?
So the budget process for next year is going to get started pretty soon. I'm thinking next month. And it'll be a conversation that begins with an overview for council by the executive budget team. And then the departments participate in a rather lengthy process to get council ready for public hearings. They usually take place in the month of September. And then in the past, it's been one day before the October Arts Commission meeting that the budget is set. And
Right.
then once the budget is set, we make the decisions together on how to finally structure the Arts Commission, the grants program. So with that said, I don't have an answer yet on what the future might hold. I believe it is almost certain that there will be cuts to next year's budget, but I have not heard that yet. This is just an expectation that I have. So as soon as I know, you'll know on what we need to consider. If there are requested cuts to the program, based on what's happened in years past, this is a very different situation, but if we were to look to history, we will be asked for proposals for cuts, both permanent and temporary cuts to all of the programs across the city. And the problem with the arts division budget is that it's very small. We operate on slim margins. And so depending on the size of the cut, in years past, we have had to impact the grants distributions. We've never had that proposal accepted, but it could very well be that we would have to lower the total amount that we have available for the grants budget. Would that be the case, then we would have a conversation with you over the course of several meetings about what that means. There is a provision. So the only thing that I think is the hard decision in that I guess it's all hard decisions. The hardest part about that is the general operating support grants, which are multi-year grants. But given that we have annual budgets, we really can't have multi-year grants, thus the recertification process. We have a provision in our agreements with operating support grant recipients that we may have to lower their grant amounts by the same percentage that the rest of the program's budget is being cut. So they know that is a possibility. And so the organizations that are keeping in touch with us and know that cuts are a possibility for next year know that that could impact their grants. But we would go through a process of discussing how those cuts get distributed. And the grants program being one of those anchors of our art program, we don't take it lightly that the money going out to the community is one that we try to protect as much as possible, but can't guarantee that won't happen. So that's what I know and some conjecture for you as well.
So I was specifically interested in the special facilities grant because last year we awarded it sort of at the end of our grant cycle. And it was a new grant, a special grant. And I've already been asked this year whether we're going to have that grant. And I said, I doubt it, honestly. That's just my personal opinion from everything I've been following with, council, what's been presented to council about the impact on the budget from lack of tax revenues. So I wondered whether you had a sense of that yet. Is that completely, it's not even a matter of discussion, we just can't do it this year?
Well, so it's already
in fact in play.
So the 2019 special facilities grants, wait, how am I thinking of 2018 special facilities grants? That one-time money for the special facilities grant was spent that year on that special program. In the next budget cycle for the 2019 budget year, Lauren, am I getting this right?
No, you were right the first time.
Okay.
2019 first round, and this year was the second. Yeah.
Okay. So in let me back up and start over. In 2019's budget year, that one-time fund of $250,000, we worked with council to set up the special facilities grant. For the 2020 budget, they made that amount ongoing, but we made the decision to add general operating support grant recipients to the list with that money. So that money is not a special facilities grant anymore. It's now added to the general operating support grant ongoing. So next year into the future, there's no sense of other one-time fundings to do something similar to the special facilities grant. It's now operational funding for a few more organizations.
And how large is that budget category now? That grant category? GOS has just been increased by $250,000. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So I'm
across
looking
all
at
the different size organizations, or just large?
no. Your decision was to divide it amongst large and extra large organizations.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So Lauren, I don't know if you could do a quick calculation of what the total GOS budget is. Okay, Lauren's working on that number for you.
Are we still on matters from commissioners?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I know I've got this big sentence here, hand the meeting over to Matt, and I don't know if I was supposed to do that already.
No, that's next. Let's finish up this one.
On the note with Angie Yang, and maybe us sending out a statement ahead of time to all these organizations that if their grant's going to fundamentally change because of COVID. I mean, I've already had a phone conversation with Dianella about the Opera in the Park that they're scheduling for August. And I told her, I said, have you talked to the city lately? They may not let you do it. Mm-hmm. Or they may have a lot of hoops to jump through as far as seating and spacing and masks and gloves. And I think you better start talking to people at the city to make sure that this event can go on. I think they would be good to send just a general statement out to everybody. You know, we'd all like to know ahead of time how this is going to impact your grant and your project, you know, as soon as possible. But she hadn't really thought she had to talk to the city, and I'm like, you better start talking to somebody now.
Yeah, no, it's good advice. Yeah, and we'll get that message out quickly.
Thank you.
Could I Could I add something to Mark, just a point you brought up, just to add another side conversation? The Vienna Philharmonic just did a study. They put an orchestra together, and supposedly chorus it's gonna be a while. That's gonna be the hardest hit. But they put an orchestra together, and supposedly 3 feet apart, they found that particles don't travel. Like you could have that kind of distance. That's going to start happening here. Like organizations, like I know Boulder Symphony, were already talking about, how are we going to put a 8-piece orchestra together, and we have those kind of regulations. So I think that's a conversation that whoever is the person in the city, maybe it's Hall of City Council. I don't know if there's a city health commissioner who's making those decisions for some of the more performing arts leaders, because we're gonna be just like we're all going to be wanting to put shows on in some limited form as soon as we possibly can. So I wonder, maybe Matt, that's a follow-up. You can connect us with somebody in the arts, in the health office that's making that decision, or is it Boulder County Health, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it is Boulder County Health that's making those types of decisions. I will say that the state also plays a role, and the state response is Boulder County Health layers on top of the state response. But here we do have a business alliance, the Boulder Recovery Business Alliance, which is a bunch of organizations, including the city and the chamber and the SBDC. I'm sitting on that group, and we're bringing up issues like this about venue reopening and events. There's also an economic recovery team, which I'm sitting on, which is just city departments, that we're looking at city regulations and things upcoming with that. And then there's our events coordinator, who's working closely with the county on outdoor events especially. And so I don't have any answers yet, but we do have a lot of teams meeting and talking about this. And so I'll make sure, Devin, that we're reporting back here about progress on it. But I haven't reported yet because the progress is, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
We're in a weird situation right now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Georgia, Bruce, do we have any other matters from commissioners?
Yeah, I wanted to bring something up real quick. Like all organizations, businesses, we're all trying to pivot. Certainly the people that we give grants to. So I just wanted to plant this seed. I know money's tight and it's getting even tighter, but should there be any money, it might be something to consider to establishing a new grant in these weird times, where the grant is just for a relatively small amount of money that would enable a group to live stream their performance. So whatever art medium they're working in, dance, theater, any number of things, we would be able to then enable them to make their performance live on whatever, Zoom or something, but they'd have some money to hire a camera person and the technology to be able to do something like that well.
That's excellent, Bruce. Thank you. Maybe we could continue that conversation. I think Lauren has a great example of how that worked a little bit with Boulder Arts Week. We did sponsorships of up to $100 to reimburse people for programs that they had to move online. And Lauren, I don't know if we've sort of evaluated how that went, but maybe it's, to Bruce's point, something that could be expanded now that we know this is going to be a need going on in the future.
Yeah, we're getting the feedback now, but it was used all very, very quickly, and people did really creative, interesting things. And also with the work projects, there are some work projects that people have been streaming, actually what Devin did, right? So there's really good examples of it, and people are doing amazing stuff. It's a good idea, and I know people would take advantage of it.
Cool.
Let's
Bruce, maybe we could meet offline and talk more about it.
Yeah, just to add to what Bruce is saying, I think that, Bruce, that's a fantastic idea. And that's going to be a big need. And I think there are a lot of people out there who have that capability, to live stream and to do it well. It's, we're looking at $3,000 to $5,000 minimum sometimes. But putting those people together with the organizations that are looking for it in some way, And obviously some kind of grant or money to help, any little thing helps, would be awesome if we could help to facilitate that as a city commission.
Yes.
Let's not forget including the venues as part of that help too.
Mhm.
You know, like the Dairy and E-Town, they all have professional lighting. You know,
Ooh.
come up with sort of a package group solution.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
exactly. And there's, as you all know, there's a large number of filmmakers here in town.
Yeah.
So the side benefit obviously is giving those people work.
Well, while we're brainstorming, I'm thinking of venue grants. I mean, if people don't need venues for at least in the next 6 months or a year, maybe we convert some of that money, or professional development money if people are not traveling to conferences. I'm just thinking like where in our budget, even though it may be cut back a bit, where in our budget we could sort of convert funds to deal with this COVID response and recovery. So if we could just keep brainstorming about it, I think that would be good. If we could make a note of that, if you wouldn't mind, Matt and Lauren, sort of like what current grants do we have that we could convert for things like streaming performances?
Yeah, we'll make a note of it for discussion.
Yeah. And I will point out that the rental assistance grants and professional development grants have been, well, the first round of professional development grants, but the rental assistance grants were given out in February. So I think, I think for next year, it's there are certainly categories like that will be worth considering.
And a follow-up question to that: the folks that got rental assistance grants and then could not do a performance, they will have to give back that money?
So something that you voted on last time, which was why we were just talking about Angie Ng's grant, is that so I have reached out to the rental assistance and professional development grant recipients, because those are two that you specifically said the commission voted and said, unless the nature of the grant has drastically changed, then give us an update and we'll put it into the my staff update that you guys get in the packet. So you'll be seeing those come in. Just now there's some coming in, right? Because it's been like a couple months since things have been canceled. But those we're getting updates on them, but it's the same idea that we're not asking for the funding back. We're asking, what did you do with it instead of doing the thing they were supposed to do in person? So you'll see those updates in your packets for those grants.
Okay, and then going forward, I do recall that conversation, but going forward, we're not going to be awarding that kind of grant money then, right? I mean, it seems a little crazy to say, yes, you can go to that conference
right
6 months from now,
well,
if we're just giving them money and they can't go to the conference.
Sure. The next round of professional development grants closes in June. So, and a lot of what I've seen with the professional development reports that have come in is that they've gone online. So, I just received 3 or 4 reports over the last week, and they all went to online conferences. So, I expect the next round to be maybe a few fewer applications, but to still be some kind of online version instead of an in-person version. So, and the rental assistance funds were gone in February, so those will all be how they've adjusted in that time, right? Instead of us getting in the applications that are already adjusted.
So it's another way to think of it is a COVID gift.
No. Yeah, no, we're not giving out gifts. No, so we would only approve an adjustment if they were doing the same program in a different format, or they were attending the same conference online instead of in person. If someone came back to us and said, yeah, I'm not going to go to that conference and instead I'm going to spend all my money on redoing my basement, obviously we would not let that go forward, right? So I want to be clear that yeah, we still have expectations on the money being spent in the spirit of what they applied for. It's just we're being as flexible as we can on how they pivot. So yeah, I think the key is, we'll continue to steward that properly going forward, But your point is really well taken, that adjusting our expectations and maybe expectations on whole grant categories, that's going to be a detailed discussion that we need to have as we talk about future funding cycles.
Okay, thank you.
Georgia, do you have anything to add?
No, I think it's all good information. I'll be curious to see how every artist moves forward in this time. I feel like people are already getting tired with the online stuff. I know when what I'm doing, my clients are already tired with Zoom workouts and dance classes. So I hope that all of these artists get really creative and find some wonderful way to keep art in our community. But that is what I was thinking about as I'm listening to you all.
I did want to thank staff for asking for the reports from the special facilities grants recipients about how COVID had affected their operations. I found those reports really interesting, and I'm glad we have that data and those comments, those assessments now, because I think that's just as an historical piece of information to understand what our arts and culture community was going through at this time. I think it's important, but I think it'll actually help us going forward to sort of look at some of the organizations and understand what the impact has been.
Any more comments from matters from commissioners? Okay, item 7, matters from staff. Matt, it's all yours.
Thanks, and I'll ask if anyone has any questions about the memo, but before I do, I want to thank Mark especially for being chair for the past few years. He's done a wonderful job in a leadership position with this group and in a collaborative position with staff, and we really appreciate your thoughtfulness and energy and forthright way of speaking your mind. It's been great having you as chair, Mark.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I could entertain.
Any questions on the manager's memo or staff updates?
No.
Okay.
Nothing new on Oculus, the Uni Hill project.
Mandy, do you want to give a 2-sentence update on that one?
Yes, because I just had a meeting with Marcel today. So this is not in your staff update because it's new information. University is trying to figure out how to actually have studio courses, but that makes a very big challenge because, of course, a studio course needs to keep the 6-foot distance and minimal touching and exposure. So as it stands right now, we perpetually are going to table that until we know next steps. So that means finishing up with the building permit, which has been, once again, in the midst of COVID, it needs to start from scratch once again, just because of how files are being transferred. And so Marcel is going to steward that through, but then he will turn all of the drawings and designs over to us to sit on, and then we could either see if there's an opportunity somewhere down the line to open it back up to the university program to actually have it be curriculum and be a course, or at that point we could put it out to bid and see how much it would come back and then request funding for that.
So the upshot is it's still sort of on hold, but this is good new information about continuing to partner with CU on it.
Potentially. The likelihood of him getting it as a course within the next 2 years is very low. But as you saw at our at the last commission meeting, the budget is only possible with a lot of students building and designing it. Mm-hmm. And so it would definitely be a double budget if we put it out to bid for someone beyond CU to fabricate it and install it.
Okay, maybe we should think about that for a bit.
Yep.
It's hard to make a commitment to that kind of money at this point.
Absolutely, but that's why, it's a good clean spot that we're in where we can say, okay, we have the drawings, we can sit on these, and then once we understand budgets a little bit better, we have an opportunity to bring it back to life.
Thank you for following up on that.
You're welcome.
And Kathleen, just a note, I know you can't see the comments section, but Lauren did post the answer to your question, which is the total amount of budget for the general operating support funds is $747,700 this year.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? So Mark, I think that's it.
Well, meeting adjourned. I'm really getting tired of these online meetings. I've only had 2 of them. And I know you guys, that's your whole life right now.
Yeah.
It is.
Man,